Very welcome to everybody joining us this afternoon on our Oracle Media Facebook page. We were waiting for everybody to still join. I see it is busy adding up. Very welcome, Emma. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's nice to have you on our show. We obviously started this last Wednesday. I think everybody's quite excited to hear what Emma Sadleir's got to say with regards to all the fake things that we're seeing on social media. You are known as the expert in that industry. What we're going to be doing today is obviously open it up to the public for questions. First, I'd like to know where you're from. Please tell us which city you're from, Port Elizabeth, Durban, Cape Town, Joburg, or even if you're out of South Africa, please comment in the comment box. I can already see some people commenting there, saying where they're from. And obviously the most important part, start a watch party. So as you see the video, click on the watch party. Let's get more people to join in and so forth. So I see already Gordon Smart saying, hey guys, please do continue to comment in the comment box. Before we start off with Emma, just a reminder that, as you know, we're working with the Nelson Mandela Business Chamber on an initiative that they started, which is the Ubuntu Fund, which is open to all businesses and anybody to donate money to, so that the Nelson Mandela Business Chamber can assist various organizations and people through this trying times. So do contact the Nelson Mandela Business Chamber with regards to that. I'm going to quickly display the email address, and that's the email address if you'd like to contact the Business Chamber with regards to anything that they're doing currently for COVID-19, and that's the Ubuntu Fund that they've just started last week. So do make contact with them with regards to that. If you're just joining us, please do comment in the inbox. Emma will be open to some questions throughout the session. We're going to try and not go on for too long. So please do and ask anything that you may want to know at the beginning already in terms of that. Emma, are you still on your side? Emma? I know we were having some issues earlier with the internet, and just before we came, oh, there you go.
All good.
Cool, perfect. And just before we came on, I quickly had to go and reset my router on my side with regards to.
Can you see me again?
I can hear you. Can you hear us? There we go.
Yes, very well. Sorry.
So Emma, it's obviously, you know, I listened to your webinar this morning, and it's interesting times that we're currently living in. A lot of fake news that's happening, and so forth. And I think a lot of people actually don't understand, you know, what they're getting themselves into by even sharing content like that. Do you want to maybe just take us into that specifically?
So I'm so sorry, you broke up just as you asked the question.
Oh, sorry. So just to repeat that, we're obviously a lot of people sharing news that could be fake and so forth on social media. And you know, what's the consequences there? And I don't think a lot of people know, you know, do I share it and then find out later it's not true? What do I do?
Yeah, so I think that as much as we're living in a health pandemic at the moment, we're also living in a fake news pandemic. And I think that we've got to start a bit of a campaign, you know, the sort of fake news stops with me. For me, the presumption has to be that every single piece of information that you receive, particularly on a WhatsApp group, is fake until you've gone and proved that it's true. I am seeing the most ridiculous things being circulated on social media. In some instances, it could potentially be true, but in most instances, it's pretty obvious from the outset that it is untrue. And I think that we've just all got to learn to become responsible about what it is that we're sharing. And if you're not sure whether what you're saying is true, then don't share it. And if you are pretty sure it's true and you've done some investigating, but you can't find a credible source, then don't share it. And if you find that it's got a source, but you're not sure if that source is credible, then you don't share it. You know, it's really starting to be incredibly cynical and skeptical about the kinds of information that we are receiving and sharing. And, you know, it's become such a big issue, Neil, that the government has released these regulations under the Disaster Management Act, which basically criminalize the sharing of fake news if it relates to COVID-19. So it's quite a specific criminal offense. It's not just all fake news is suddenly a criminal offense. basically, if you are sharing a statement which is false, and you are sharing it with the intention to deceive, i.e., you either know that it's not true and you're trying to deceive other people, or you just haven't bothered to check whether or not it's true, sort of a reckless disregard for the truth, then you can be punished, you can be prosecuted. It's a 6-month prison term and or a fine. The fine is, in these cases, generally up to 100,000 rand. And we're starting to see arrests. So I think that we really, we don't want to have to use this offense. We don't want to feel like we're stifling everyone's freedom of expression. But before you share something, just make sure it's true. Otherwise, I used to say that if you share fake news, you're just dumb. But actually, these days, you can do real harm. Where you are encouraging complacency, for example, if you're telling people that actually there is a cure and all you have to do is just gargle a bit of bicarb or drink some apple cider vinegar or some lemon or drink hot tea all day and you won't get it, or it only affects white people, or there's a vaccine. And then we're encouraging people to be complacent. When somebody contracts the virus, it's a very serious problem because of the mental health consequences.
And we also saw specifically with the earbuds, I think, where that was shared everywhere. And like you mentioned this morning, a lot of people said, not sure if I want to get tested because of that specifically. So what would have happened if other people also share that, knowing that it's a joke specifically? They would obviously now be open to be prosecuted as well.
Yeah, look, there are ways of sharing content to express outrage. I can't believe that this person has posted this. This is outrageous. I think it must be very obvious from the way you're sharing it that it's untrue. For me, it's almost too risky. So where I shared to tell people that this was fake news, instead of sharing the video and saying, don't share this is fake news, because I don't want to be permeating the harm, I shared just a screenshot of the guy's face with his earbud up his nose because he's like who takes that seriously? I don't know. And, I say that flippantly, but actually this had a huge impact. And I must have received this from like over 30 people who thought it was real. And I've been speaking to a lot of my friends all over South Africa. The reach that video got was much more powerful than the front page of the Sunday Times. So we do have to take that content, even though we think it's so perfectly outrageous, very seriously. And we've seen it in the screening, government volunteers going from house to house to take this screening and being told to get lost because they don't want to contract COVID from these tests. It really is a terrifying thing. So part of this was fake news, but part of it is what I call selfie incrimination, which is when people like self-bust themselves. So they take videos or photos of themselves doing illegal things, or let other people take those pictures. So, for example, the Stella Nkabindi Abraham photo, which was taken, which has led to her special leave, 1 month that's unpaid. And Cyril Ramaphosa saying, I was unmoved by her excuses. There's a pretty powerful word from President Ramaphosa. And, I would prefer that she was fired because it's just outrageous. But it is this self-incrimination, or what my friend Tom calls shooting yourself in your own footage. And so what Stephen Burke did, this guy with the earbud, was that he took this video looking at the camera. So he was identified. Often fake news, it's an inanimate voice note, or we don't know the source. In this case, we knew the source. There he was. And he posted it on the 2 Facebook pages he's got, Stephen D. Birch and Stephen Donald Birch. And he was very quickly traced by the digital vigilante mob, who found out exactly where he was, what his address was, his personal details. And he was arrested, and he appeared in court yesterday. He's been released on bail, and he will appear back in court on the 14th of July on this criminal offence. And if it was up to me, I would put him in jail.
And do you think government is acting quick enough in terms of the fake news that's going out?
I think it's impossible to stay on top of. I've dipped my toe in the muddy waters of fake news, not as an official fact checker by any stretch, or not. I just because I'm in the business, and then people were messaging me saying, "Have you seen this? Is it true?" And then suddenly I've become a fact checker. We are inundated. There are organizations like What's Crap, Africa Check. There's the Real 411, which is an organization which you can submit content to. There's also WhatsApp has brought out a fake news WhatsApp hotline number where you can send tip-offs of fake news to that number, and they will investigate it. But it's just too big a tsunami for anybody to be able to contain effectively in any way. So I think that's why the responsibility, rather than being with government, and I think the odd, like high-profile prosecution, in the same way that we had those high-profile prosecutions in racism cases like Vicky Momberg, like Penny Sparrow, like Adam Katsouvalis, hopefully that filters down to the communities where somebody's sharing something utterly outrageous and people quickly jump up on it and say, don't share this, this is actually a criminal offense, be very careful, that kind of thing.
Yes. No, definitely. I think that may be the way that we will have to go. Is there a question here from Walter Snyman? Do you think that these regulations may become the first step to a more regulated social media environment in South Africa?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of criticism about the regulations. There's what I call the freedom of speech absolutists in South Africa who think that this is outrageous and that how dare we be censored. The truth is that there are always censorships. The right to freedom of expression in South Africa is not an absolute right, while it is a fundamental right. I would actually go so far, Neil, as to say that it's the cornerstone of our democracy. It's not an absolute right. We can't publish graphic pictures of child pornography on the front page of the newspaper. And everyone agrees that that is a valid restriction of my right to freedom of expression. So on this side, we've got the right to freedom of expression. And on this side, we've got the right to privacy, the right to dignity, the right to equality, all of these conflicting rights. And then we have to draw the line, well, where are we allowed to say something and where are we not allowed to say something? What if I really want to publish that picture, that naked picture of my ex-girlfriend? I think it's my right to freedom of expression. What if I want to write racism? What if I want to call everyone the K word? That is, to some people, censorship, but it's the law, So it's drawing a balance between these conflicting rights. And as much as people think that social media is the Wild West, there is absolutely no difference in the way that we treat content on social media as the way we treat content on any other public platform. As soon as one other person has seen the content, then all the laws kick in. We treat that content as if you'd published it on the front page of the newspaper. So the only real difference that I'm seeing in terms of a new offense is this fake news offense, which is, I think, not an unlimiting restriction, and I think it's not an unconstitutional restriction to the right to freedom of expression because it's so limited in its scope. Firstly, it requires the fake news to be about COVID, about the COVID status of somebody or the steps taken by government to combat COVID, and it has to be sent with the intention to deceive. So because of those two narrowing factors, I think it's a totally constitutional restriction on our right to freedom of expression.
And also, how do you get to a point that you also know what, should I share this or should I not share this to the public if I put something on social media? I think that's a big thing. If you look at some of the stuff that came up over this weekend, even from Pretoria specifically, about people driving around there, how do you decide I shouldn't share that, for those who don't know?
So when it comes to fake news, when in doubt, don't. If there is even a glimmer of doubt in your mind about whether or not to share it, don't. I always use the Billboard test whenever I'm talking about whether or not you should post something or whether or not you should let something exist in a digital format. And I get, literally when I'm teaching, I get people to close their eyes and imagine the biggest billboard they've ever seen in their lives, and then imagine a huge photograph of their face, their name of the company that they work for, and then whatever it is they're about to say. So would you put it on that billboard? That's the question. And if you wouldn't, then you don't put it on social media. You don't let it exist in digital format because digital content is dangerous content. Neil, even if you and I were WhatsApping each other privately, I wouldn't say anything to you in a WhatsApp, even a private WhatsApp, that I wouldn't put on my billboard, because what's stopping you from taking a screenshot, circulating it, putting it on Twitter, putting it on Facebook? You shouldn't do it because it's an infringement of my privacy, but the reality is that you might. So we have to treat all content as all digital content as dangerous content, as vulnerable content. In terms of the sort of naming and shaming things that we're seeing, so I've seen somebody's gone for a run, they're flouting lockdown regulations. Should I post it? Well, provided what you're saying is true and for the benefit of the public, you can say it. Because it would be defamation. If I named and shamed somebody, if I saw you going for a run, Neil, and I've been wanting to go for a run. I don't run at all. I can't run. Like, I'm the worst. But just roll with me here. Like, I'd like to go ride my horse, right? So I see somebody rides their horse past my front door, and I take a picture of them and I put it on social media. This is outrageous. This is illegal. Why is this person doing it? It's defamatory because even if I haven't named that person, I've still identified them by using their face. I've published it and I've hurt their reputation. I've said you are a criminal, right? You are a bad human because you are flouting these regulations, which are there in place for us all to be as safe as possible. So you've met the 3 requirements of defamation. doesn't mean you can't defame people. Doesn't mean some people, some companies shouldn't be defamed. If you're going to jump on the defamation bandwagon, make sure that what you're saying is true and for the benefit of the public. And it's probably worth noting, Neil, that just because something's true, it doesn't mean you can publish it. It has to also be for the benefit of the public. So me going on a rant about my loser ex-husband and how he's frolicking around town with his new floozy might be totally true, but it's not for the benefit of the public. Me airing my dirty laundry is not in the public interest.
Then you don't share it specifically. I also see there's a question here from that's come through from Helen asking, how can we be sure what news is actually correct and what's not? So how do you do that test? If you see something, you go, oh, look at this. Should I share it? Should I not share it?
Despite what happened with News 24 this weekend, I still think that we should get our news from news sites. That's got to be safer, because there are so many rules that apply to the traditional press in South Africa that even though they get it wrong, like News 24 did over this weekend, and I'm not making excuses for them in any way, it was really outrageous, particularly that content was allowed to remain online for so long. But generally, it is much, much safer. If we look at the sheer volume of media that people are consuming and seeing and reading, I think you're just much safer getting it from a proper news site. I do like to think that News 24, I was going to swear, I shouldn't swear, mess up, was a once-off, because it really was abominable what happened. And just as I say, how long it went online for, because where people mess up, and the law even says in South Africa that the media can occasionally get it wrong, provided they've acted as responsible journalists. They've got many sources, they've checked everything. Then the law says, okay, provided you acted reasonably, you can actually get it wrong. But then we should have expected a very quick apology, a very quick correction, retraction, and that, I'm afraid, wasn't forthcoming. But in general, get your news from news sites.
Perfect. Then Flora is also asking you today, what if customers are making up stories or taking positive stories and turning it into a negative to try and harm a company?
Yeah. So if what a customer is saying isn't true, then it's defamation. So if you take a site like Hello Peter, for example, a website which hosts a whole lot of reviews, you can sue a customer for posting a defamatory review about your company if what they're saying isn't true and for the benefit of the public. There's another defense that we call fair comment. It basically should be called honest opinion. It's basically where somebody shares their opinion, which is honestly held, as soon as they're motivated by malice. So as soon as that person who's writing that review about your restaurant owns the restaurant next door, and they didn't even have a meal at your restaurant, they just really want to say a terrible thing about the restaurant, they can't say it because they would be motivated by malice. Well, firstly, it's not true. But as soon as you're motivated by malice, you lose the defense of honest opinion. But provided if the customer is reporting their genuine experience, it's based on fact, then they can defame you. If they're lying, if they're not telling the truth, then you can sue them for defamation. And you must.
Cool. Then another one from Enriquez. What about questioning the validity of news on social media platforms? So
I think that
are you there still, Emma?
There is nobody who's beyond criticism in South Africa. If you think, even judges, high court judges, the president, we don't have censorship laws around what we say about the president in South Africa. You are allowed to criticize anyone, provided it's an honestly held opinion, it's based on a fact, a true fact, and you're not motivated by malice, then you can say it. There isn't anybody in South Africa who's beyond reproach. In some countries, like in actually quite a lot of the African countries that I work in, they still have laws that say you can't say anything bad about the president, even if the president is a complete schmuck. You can't say it because you can be put in prison. South Africa, we don't have that. If people want to complain today and say that Cyril Ramaphosa should have fired Stella Abrahams and Ngabedi Abrahams, then people can say it. Nobody's going to put you in jail for criticizing the president. So you can criticize the news media, you can criticize government, you can criticize the judiciary, you can criticize anyone, provided it's valid.
Cool. Then a question here from Kurt. Kurt's asking, people share so many things, COVID-19 and otherwise, that I would never have shared because it looks dodgy to me. How do people check if this news outlet is credible? So I think that's, again, just thinking about what news agency it's coming from. Especially at spelling, there's a lot of news that goes around, and it looks, for example, like CNN, but when you click on the article, it takes you to another URL.
Well, it looks like CNN, or it suddenly is CCN, so it looks, or it's Times Live, but with 2 letters swapped around. So people are trying to scam you, so I think that having the apps on your phone is a good start. So I go to the BBC, I go to The Guardian, I go to EWN, I go to News 24. I know News 24 is like a swear word, but I still think that it's much more reliable than the voice note you're getting from your tunny on the community WhatsApp group.
What do you think the way forward is going to be? Obviously, with the Disaster Management Act that's enacted now, and everybody is being monitored and so forth. How do you think that's going to change the way we live? If you look at other countries, are they being monitored? And especially on some of the Asian countries, it's very different to over here.
Yeah, I don't mean any disrespect, but I didn't realize we had the technological capability to be doing what government seems to be doing. I read an article this morning about a businessman in the first week of lockdown who was contacted and said, you were in this place last week. There was a COVID patient who was in the same place as you. You need to go for testing. It's really incredible. So I think it does feel very much sort of Big Brother is watching us. But again, your human rights can be restricted if there is a pressing reason why it should be. And I think where the government is using our location data in order to trace people who may have been exposed to the virus, I'm totally happy. I welcome Big Brother. You come on in, baby. If that means that I can be protected, my health can be looked after better because of that data, then I'm all for it. I do think that we start getting into quite murky territory, particularly around privacy, because as soon as this technological capability is there, you get a little nervous that it may be abused in the future. So as much as at the moment I think it's warranted and I think it's valid, I can get very, I do get nervous that it's going to be misused in the future. And I think that what we've seen in some of the more Big Brother states, like in China, I've got a friend in China. If she leaves her front door, she knows she is being monitored, exactly how long she goes, where she goes to. If she goes to the grocery store and she spends too long, they are on her. Like, she literally gets a knock on her door. And that's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. We do not want to go down that path. But where there's a significant public interest element, then I do think it's warranted, but I do think we need to, as privacy advocates, keep a very close eye on it to make sure it's not abused in the future.
And another one, Emma, what happens specifically if someone posts a content onto my, say, public page? So say I've got a neighborhood page and it is Johannesburg specifically, and someone is posting on there. And I didn't see that for a whole weekend. I maybe go on once a week, and in that week, it goes hectically viral. Can I get into trouble after that?
Yeah, so we have a very important principle in South African law that we call the chain of publication. Now, if anyone's ever been to one of my talks, you would have heard this before, but the law is this. If you are in the chain of publishing illegal content, you're responsible for that content. It doesn't matter that I didn't create it. So if somebody sends me a racist meme and I press forward, doesn't matter that I didn't create that meme. I'm responsible for it because I am distributing it. So every element of the distribution chain is responsible. It's not a new law. Before social media, if I was defamed in a newspaper and I wanted to sue somebody, I could sue the source of the article, the journalist who wrote the article, the newspaper editor, the newspaper company, the printing company, the CNA, if I bought it from the CNA. Since 1934 in this country, CNA has been responsible for every word of every page of every book, magazine, and newspaper they sell. So the test is, do I have the power to stop something from being published? If somebody puts child pornography on my Facebook page, I have the ability to delete it, right? If somebody complains about my company on Hello Peter, the website has the ability to delete that content, which means if I want to, I can sue them for the distribution of it, for the publication. So in the same way that I could sue the actual person who complained or hold responsible the person who placed that pornography on my page, I can also hold accountable the administrator of that page because they have the ability to stop it. Now, Where we're dealing with the secondary position, they have a special defense that we call the defense of innocent dissemination, which basically means that, yes, they're responsible, but if they haven't seen it, they are an innocent disseminator. They're not responsible for the content. So if I try and sue maybe a community page, it's a huge community page with hundreds of thousands of members, and I try and sue the admin of that Facebook page for content on there about me, they can say, we haven't seen it. As soon as we saw it, we took it down. We're not responsible. They have the defense of innocent dissemination. So the law is, if you have the ability to stop something from being published, if you have the ability to delete content, you're in the chain of publication. So if somebody comments underneath my Instagram photo, I have the power to delete it. I'm responsible. I have editorial control. If somebody @s me on Twitter, I've got no control. I can't be held responsible. So the law is, can you stop it? Can you dissociate yourself from it? That's an important one, because we have a case in South Africa that says if you're tagged in content and you don't untag yourself from that content, presuming you're aware of it, because otherwise it's innocent dissemination, then you are responsible for that content. So again, very interesting, developing law all the time, but the principle is, if you can stop the publication, if you can dissociate yourself from the content, you're in the chain of publication and you're responsible.
Oh, okay. So it's, obviously, if you don't know if it's true or you suspect it's fake, untag yourself, remove from your page, and rather.
Yeah, and then also on these WhatsApp pages, you know, my reading of some of the judgments coming out of the high courts in South Africa is that if you're on a WhatsApp group and there's dodgy stuff going on the WhatsApp group, so I'm on a WhatsApp group, say somebody, so this happened to me, a friend of my dad's puts me on a WhatsApp group. It's a jokes WhatsApp group. So I mute the group because I have to survive the day and try and get some work done. And at the end of the day, I'm going through it, and they're like horrible racist jokes, like not funny jokes being circulated on this group. So I immediately left the group, sent a message to the admin, and said, please, like, don't add me to that. Why did you add me to that? I don't want to be a part of that. And, you know, it's almost the message we're getting as South Africans is that you have to confront illegal content in all its forms. So in the same way that I'm on my community WhatsApp group, if somebody sends like absurd fake news, which I think can do harm, I'm not going to sit by and say nothing. I'm going to confront it with better news. I'm going to say, that's not true. Please message everybody who you've sent that to and explain to them it's not true. Here's an article rebutting it. This is why it's not true. What is your source? Challenge people. And I think that's what we've all got to be doing. Fake news stops with me. Challenge people.
And take action there. Elaine's also asking a question. Is the social media law cross-national? If South Africans send the video from Italy, what are the repercussions?
Yeah, so the trans-jurisdictional issues on social media are some of the biggest issues that we deal with as lawyers on social media. We saw with the Adam Katsavelos case, Katsavelos, I always say his name wrong, but basically he was on a beach in Greece, took a selfie video, said this horrific racism, uploaded it onto a WhatsApp group with very few members in Greece. So then we have a question of which court has jurisdiction, because he was in Greece, the actual thing happened in Greece, but the publication, because of the viral nature of social media, the international nature of social media, happened in South Africa. And the effect, so where we're dealing with crimen injuria, the effect is the infringement of the dignity. The people whose dignity was infringed were in South Africa. So when he returned to South African shores, he was prosecuted here. So it is difficult. Like, we're not going to suddenly arrest somebody who is in Sweden for fake news if they don't have any link to South Africa and they're never going to come to South Africa. But where you're dealing with a South African resident who's abroad, who returns home, those kind of people should be very wisened up to what the law says here.
Okay, cool. That's quite interesting. Then Gordon Smart asking here, what are the new regulations surrounding responsibility held by admins on WhatsApp groups?
Yeah, so I do think that the admin, I saw a lot of stories going around about how admins of WhatsApp groups are responsible for everything circulated on those groups. And that is, it's partly true in that in the South African case law, we talk a lot about providing the notice board. So if you're the admin of the WhatsApp group, you've created that WhatsApp group, you are providing a public notice board where people can publish their content. So you need to know that there are rules that apply to what's going on that WhatsApp group, but you can't preemptively be held responsible for what somebody else is going to say. Like if I'm on my family WhatsApp group, I can't foresee that my step-grandmother in England is about to post some fake news. I can't be held responsible for that. What I can be held responsible for is if I don't immediately go and correct it, or if I have guidelines. So I'm a big fan of WhatsApp group guidelines. And actually, I've just finalized some before I came on air. They'll be on my Facebook page this afternoon. I'm happy for anybody to share them. But basically, I think that there should be WhatsApp group guidelines. These are the rules that apply to the WhatsApp group. You don't play by the rules, we're going to kick you off the group. You know what I mean? So after the fact, I think the administrator does have responsibility to make sure that they're keeping a clean sheet on their notice board. It can't preemptively be held responsible for every single thing that gets circulated. If I'm the admin of a WhatsApp group and somebody circulates fake news on that group, I'm very quickly going to make sure that I'm correcting it, asking the person to delete it if it's still within the time period that you can delete the content, because you only have 7 minutes to delete content on WhatsApp. As the admin, I can't make sure that I delete somebody else's message that nobody else can ever see it. That's not within my realm of ability as an admin of a WhatsApp group. If it was, and I didn't do it straight away, then there would be much greater liability that attached.
Any advice for anybody living in, well, obviously in South Africa with regards to this whole COVID-19, social media, fake news and so forth that you would, if I had to come to you and ask you now for any advice, what would you give to me?
If you're not sure, don't share it. There's this great infographic which my friend Mike Stopforth created, which I shared on my Facebook page. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And it's a very good sort of decision tree in deciding whether or not you should share something. I think everybody needs to go and have a look at that and apply it in their everyday lives. If you're not sure, if you're not 100% sure that what you're saying is true, do not share it. It really is just not worth it.
And then Emma, anybody that wants to get a hold of you with regards to defamation on social media or anything like that, how would they get a hold of you specifically?
Yeah, so I'm at Emma Sadleir on Twitter. My Facebook page is The Digital Law Company. My Instagram page is The Digital Law Company. And my website is thedigital.lawco.com. We do publish a few blogs where we're dealing with big issues like sextortion, which is a huge issue. We often have to direct people to the same advice, so we post blogs in those cases. And we try and keep up to date as far as possible. So I tweet as many updates as I can. We put on our Facebook page a lot of updates. I'm not a practicing attorney, so I can help people with consulting and, should I take any kind of legal action in this case? Should I maybe just prepare a reputational response? Because sometimes it's better just to focus on the reputational consequences rather than taking legal steps. And I think that, I think the message must be that there are laws, that people do have rights. I think that there is this sense that social media is just the Wild West. And I get so happy when I see cases. Like I was thinking about this recently. Oyanda Mbuli went and laid criminal charges against Joyce Malamu for crimen injuria because she was bullying her on social media. I really like that, because the more that people with means take action to protect their rights, the more the 15-year-old girl who's being so horrifically bullied and is on suicide watch realizes that there are things that they can do, that they can get in touch with us, that we can advise them to go and get a protection order, lay a crimen injuria charge. If somebody's been the victim of image-based violence, if they've taken naked pictures and they've landed up in the wrong hands, or somebody has filmed them having sex and that content's landed up on a porn site, look after yourselves. You are the victim in that situation. You should not be shamed. Go forward and get help as far as possible, because I think that so often, particularly public shaming, there's this wonderful book by a guy called John Ronson, and it's called So You've Been Publicly Shamed. And they talk about how shaming is the very worst thing that can happen to somebody. It's worse than having to go and spend time in prison, to be publicly shamed like that. And I think that we need to remember the victim in this case. Often because the internet is so faceless, we forget that there are real people behind the screens who can be seriously affected by content, and we've got to protect their rights at all costs.
Oh, well. No, look, it's opened up a big can of worms, I think, with social media growing the way it is, and people not knowing what to do. I'm going to take one last question here before we log off, but before we go there, I just want to remind everybody that We obviously have a few more speakers coming on this whole month. We've got Brightness that's joining us this Friday, talking crisis management during social media. Next week, Monday, we've got Tanusha that will be joining us, also talking on the marketing side and what to do. Then next week, Wednesday, we have Michael Jackson and Bev Hancock that will be joining us to talk about what do you do during the lockdown period and getting your business around that specifically. And in the following Friday, we have Michael Zoetmulder, that's the 17th, and he'll be talking about how did the events industry change during the lockdown. So quite a few speakers. That's just this week. That's coming up. It obviously carries on right to the end of the month for various speakers every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 o'clock with regards to that. Emma, one last question. There's quite a few coming through. Can you see it on your side? Do you want to choose one?
I can see quite a few. So I think that this one's pretty interesting. Just as an example, somebody states that if you buy an item from a specific company, you are buying coronavirus. What happens then? Because it's related to corona, because it's related to COVID-19, you can actually go and lay a criminal charge against that person for fake news, because obviously it's rubbish. And you know, if it was if you buy this product, you're going to get cancer, you wouldn't be able to do it. But because it's related to COVID-19, use it as a test case, go and lay a criminal charge and see what the police do with it.
Well, and especially, can I ask, during this period where we're doing lockdown, do you phone the police first before you go in, or are you still allowed to go to the police station?
You know, going to the police station is an essential service, so you can certainly go. You can certainly go in person. If you don't want to do that, then there are electronic ways to report crimes as well.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Please comment in the video, provide us some feedback about what you've learned today, how it was for you, and so forth. We'd love to get your feedback with regards to it. Don't forget, it's this coming Friday, Brightness on crisis management specifically. Thanks so much for joining us. Emma, thank you so much from your side.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And if people have questions afterwards, they're welcome to get hold of me on social media.
I also just want to say, I think I contacted you on Saturday morning with regards to one of our clients specifically needing your services. And I think you helped that client immediately, which was quite good.
Well, I'm afraid social media doesn't sleep, so we don't need that.
Thank you so much, Emma. You must have a good day. And everybody that wants to get hold of Emma, please do go to her Facebook page, specifically in terms of that.